In the late 1800s, in a small town in the Midwest of the United States, a young boy painted happily, using only a wooden box for an easel. A mediocre student, haunted by a seeming inability to spell, he was blessed with a cheerful, airy temperament and a clear sense of his own purpose. Although Alfred Klots knew early in life he was destined to be an artist, he could have never imagined that one day he would paint in front of a chateau of his own creation in France. Alfred was born to privilege, but not immune to adversity. His parents divorced when he was still a child. His father died when he was in his teens, and in his early 20s his eyes began to fail, and he had to endure several painful operations. During the recuperation from one of his operations, his mother offered to send him to Paris to continue his art studies at the Académie Julian. Alfred achieved success early on, when his watercolors were exhibited at the conservative but still influential Salon of 1903, at the Grand Palais des Beaux-Arts. One hurdle remained in his life as an artist: his future wife.
Alfred was all ready to go to Paris, but a few years before he had met and fallen in love with a young woman named Agnes Boone, and she had a hard time envisioning her life as the wife of an artist. She kept trying to convince Alfred that he should be an interior decorator or a businessman, to which he said, "I would rather die." And when she gave him this ultimatum, he gave her one back, which was that he said, "My first love is art. I can't live without being an artist."
In 1902, Alfred first came to Rochefort. It had become popular with artists of the era because of its soft light, beautiful countryside, and cheap lodgings. Artists could pay their way at the Hôtel Le Cadre by decorating the doors to their rooms or by leaving paintings behind. He was deeply charmed by Rochefort, and after several years of visiting, in 1907 he purchased the ruins of the old chateau and its outbuildings. Alfred and Agnes split their lives between the United States and France. In the early years of their marriage, 2 children were born to them: Elizabeth in 1906 and Trafford in 1913. Alfred loved Rochefort and wanted to make it even more beautiful than it already was. He created the Flowered Window Contest in 1911, and the competition became an important annual event in the village. It also served as an inspiration for the national competition in France for the most flowered village. Over the years, he made many friends in the village and was well known for his discreet generosity. Alfred became a well-known painter of portraits in the United States. His clients were often the wives of successful industrialists, and the commissions were generous. However, his career as an artist and his plans to renovate the chateau were put on hold with the arrival of World War I. Unlike other American artists, he remained in France to help care for the wounded and worked at the American hospital in Paris as a nurse's aide. His wife Agnes remained as well and visited over 300 hospitals in Brittany to inventory their needs and raise money for them. She was frequently stopped and once arrested as her name sounded German. As the war ended, he converted the chateau into a sanatorium for American soldiers whose lungs had been damaged by mustard gas, not only caring for them personally, but entertaining them with lavish holiday parties. After the war, Alfred returned to the renovations of his beloved chateau.
The Chateau of Caralio in Noyelles-Musillac, not far away, was being demolished, and they were taking the stones to the quarry just to get rid of them. He ended up buying the chateau to use the sculpted stones for outside elements like the lucarnes, which are dormer windows, both Gothic and Renaissance, and the towers, and stones for the outside and woodwork for the inside, for mantelpieces and all the beautiful woodwork inside. And he was also very involved in the decoration, buying all the material and upholstering himself, working alongside all of the masons and carpenters and workers. He was completely wiped out, exhausted after many years and actually great expense of renovating this chateau, but he was just so excited that he knew that this was his greatest work of art.
Tragedy was never far away, however. His daughter Elizabeth developed severe psychiatric issues in her teens and eventually died in a mental institution. Alfred's beloved wife Agnes died a few years later in 1936. Widowed, and with another war approaching, Alfred traveled alone to Bali and tragically drowned while swimming off the coast. His son Trafford, having lost his sister, mother, and father, took over the chateau at only 26 years of age. From the beginning, it was obvious that Trafford was very much like his father. He also had a light, playful temperament, and was a terrible student who couldn't spell. He began drawing and painting at an early age, and his letters to his mother were often delightfully illustrated. Trafford, like Alfred, quit school in his teens to dedicate his life to art. He spent the next decade being tutored by his father and painting alongside him. They painted the murals in the Café Breton in Rochefort, using as models many friends from the village. With their characteristic light touch, they included several comic images and even managed to subtly insert themselves as well. But this idyllic period of Trafford's life was cut short by Alfred's premature death and the arrival of World War II.
Trafford, like his father before him, had a strong allegiance to France. And he even enlisted in the army before America got involved in the war. And when finally America did get involved, he was sent to Europe, and the British sent him immediately down to North Africa because they needed to have a translator to try to convince the Vichy French not to fight against the British. And one incredible coincidence, he went to Béjaïa in Algeria, and when he met with the French commander, it turned out to be an old friend from across the field in Brittany. So that certainly helped smooth the way for that battle not to happen. Then afterwards, Trafford was sent back to England, where he was very involved in communicating with the French resistance, who knew about where the German nests of spies were in Normandy. And he was so crucial in that effort to help set up the D-Day invasion that Eisenhower called him his secret weapon.
Trafford wanted to fight on, but seeing the terrible toll the war had taken on him, his superiors ordered him back to the United States to recuperate. Some years prior, Trafford had met and fallen in love with fellow Baltimorean Isabel Hewlings. But only 10 days after they wed, Trafford went to England to join the war. Upon his return at the end of the war, he and Isabel settled into life on her mother's farm near Baltimore.
Trafford and Isabel came back for the first time after the war in 1946, and they were delighted to find that the gardener and the cook, Ferdinand and Maria Andrea, had taken great care of the chateau, even making sure that the furniture and the paintings and all the valuables from inside the house were sequestered away so that the Germans couldn't get at them. The furniture and the paintings and other valuables were taken by local villagers and hidden in their homes, and the silverware was hidden in the ground, in the garden, underneath the very chairs where the Germans would sit at night, which Trafford found extremely amusing.
As Alfred and Agnes had before them, Trafford and Isabel divided their lives between Baltimore and Rochefort. He became well known for his skill at portrait painting, and amongst other luminaries painted the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. He was particularly at ease with children and painted them lovingly, and often included light-hearted touches in his work. For instance, A portrait of a village woodworker contains a curious detail of his wife riding a motorcycle in traditional Breton garb. It was Trafford's way of teasing her for how upset she was at her son for having purchased a motorcycle. She was nicknamed afterwards Mary Moto. At the bottom right of his painting in the Rochefort church, you will find him with his palette, as well as the granddaughter of the same village woodworker. The painting also contains a recurrent motif of his, a winking angel. In September of 1976, Trafford passed away of a heart attack on the terrace of a hotel room in Tunisia, where he and Isabel had been celebrating their anniversary. He, as his father before him, died while traveling at 63. A plaque from the chapel at the chateau sums up the spirit of his life perfectly. Américain mais Rochefortais. American, but a citizen of Rochefort. 2 generations of the Klots family devoted their lives as if they had been citizens of France themselves. They worked to honor the heritage of Rochefort and supported their adopted country through 2 world wars. Every member of the family, Alfred, Agnes, Trafford, and Isabel, was awarded the Legion of Honor for their service to France. The Klots family tombstone in the Rochefort graveyard contains carved references to the chateau, the United States, and the art of painting. Buried inside are not only the Klots themselves, but uncharacteristically for the time, many who worked for them and had become like extended family. If you examine the tomb carefully, you will find a carved version of the same angel from the church painting, Trafford winking at you from the grave.